Hello, this is Yelzrake, and welcome to an introduction to Marble Madness 1-player 2-controller. This is a new category that I started running back at the end of May of 2018, and I wanted to put together a little video of what I've figured out so far to try to make this run feasible. For those that don't know, this is a run whereby you control both marbles at the same time. So you hold two controllers by yourself and beat the game with both blue and red at the same time. I wanted to put together the video to kind of go over some of the tricks and death abuses and whatnot that I figured out along the way, and kind of detail what I'm looking at when I perform some of these tricks, and to just kind of provide a template for others to try, or to give a potential future commentator a file to leverage to provide feedback on what's happening in a relatively fast run in like a marathon setting. So the first thing I'll say for 1p2c is that you need to find a two-controller grip that works for you. Now, in my case, the grip I'm using is, I fondly refer to it as the Yagamoth grip, because I've seen the speedrunner Yagamoth do Secret of Mana 1p2c numerous times. And in that case, he held the first player controller relatively normally, and then he held the second player controller rotated 180 degrees underneath the first player controller, so that he was using an inverted D-pad for the second player controller. And that is the grip that I use. So I have my middle and ring fingers of my left hand holding on to and like kind of applying pressure on the sides of them to hold the A button down on the second player controller, and then I have my index and middle fingers pinning down or trying to pin down the A button on the first player controller, as you'll see as the video progresses. This grip may not work for you. You may want to try something else. This is not necessarily the conventional grip, but whatever convention you opt to use, my first recommendation is, once you figure out the grip that you're comfortable with, if either grip or both grips are unconventional compared to how you would normally play Marble Madness, I strongly recommend that you try each grip separately in a solo run. So in my case, the blue marble didn't require any extra work because I was holding the controller roughly the same way, slightly at a different angle. But for red, since it was turned 180 degrees, I needed to practice red by itself. So I was able to set up a save state rather simply. On the practice race, I would scroll the screen down a little bit after starting a two-player race, and then I would roll blue up off the top of the screen repeatedly, so it would accumulate 5-second time losses until it ran out of time, and then I rolled red back up to the top to the starting point and saved the state, and then voila, you have an opportunity to run the whole game as red without blue interrupting at all, or slowing the game down or anything. So anyway, we're going to move on to the practice race. So for the practice race, there's a couple important things here. This was actually one of the last races that I learned, because most of the races I tried to figure out simultaneous inputs, and this one, because of the slaloms at the bottom, you really do have to alternate inputs. And you can find a good rhythm and get comfortable with it, but it takes a little while to get used to. So I actually don't recommend practicing this one too much at the get-go. This is something that you could work on later, unless you feel really comfortable with not pressing inputs on both controllers at the same time. Then I'll say you could probably do better at this game than I can, because there are certain concessions that I take to make sure that I can get through difficult areas, only by my ability to press inputs on both controllers at the same time. It's a comfort thing for me. So what you'll see here is it's going to start simply enough, and we're going to get around this big centerpiece here, and then we're going to try to line these marbles up vertically. So you want them lined up vertically so that you can effectively push the same inputs on both controllers, just at a slight delay on the second controller. You're going to press down on both of them at the same time, but then you're going to hit left at the appropriate time, right at the appropriate time, left at the appropriate time. That's the second bullet point, is that you're going to use cardinal inputs here. Since you have the A buttons pressed down, you've got speed, and when you've got speed and you hit these slaloms, you just hit left and the marble will move down and left because of all of its downward momentum. You hit right and it's going to go down and right because of its momentum, etc., etc. So you line them up, and this one I went pretty quick. I didn't hesitate, but since it's the practice race and the time here doesn't roll over to the next race, you feel free to take all the time you need lining this up. You could take 2 or 3 extra seconds to make sure you get them lined up just right. But once you move into the slalom section, you're going to get to the first slalom here, and you're going to want to make sure that when you hit that valley, and you're going to want to make sure you watch each marble hit each valley. So it's going to be interesting for a while. Like when you get into this section, you're staring at the valleys, not at the marbles. So each valley in turn, you just want to watch the marbles and hit the appropriate cardinal direction on that controller once you see it hit it. If you hit them both at the same time, one of them's going to roll off and die, and you don't want that. So you want to make sure to hit left when each marble gets to roughly that crack. Like roughly this crack right here. That's what you're going to want to see. And then same deal when they each get to the second crack here. Right, that's when you want to hit right. So you're going to go like you're holding down from when you line them up, and then when you get to the slaloms, it's left, left, right, right, left, left. Alternating inputs with each controller. And again, this one right here as well. When you hit this crack here, that's when you want to be turning left with each one. And you can see in this example I got double 54s, which is exceptionally rare, I'd say. So here, let's watch it all start to finish. So you weave them around just like you were playing co-op with a friend. You line them up, and then you go left, left, right, right, left, left. And you can kind of see my thumbs as we get to the slaloms. If you watch my thumbs down here, like they almost move at the same time. It almost looks like they're moving across the D-pads at the same time, but they're subtly delayed on the second controller. It's always blue, red, blue, red, blue, red. And I intentionally let blue win this race because, as it turns out, the way I end up playing this, blue is the one that ends up needing more time down the stretch, which we will get into in the later races. Alright, the second race is the beginner race, which is a big reset point for this category. Essentially, it's a race against time to get over the drawbridge at the appropriate cycle, and the amount of time that you lose from missing a drawbridge cycle is fairly severe. And it's just not something that we're really interested in. So this is where we introduce a few extra things. The first is kind of my go-to technique when I'm steering both marbles at the same time in this category, and that is simultaneous direction movement, or simultaneous direction changes. That is to say that I am not good at alternating movements between controllers, so I have a tendency, if I'm going to shift my thumb on the D-pad, I'm going to want to shift my thumb on both D-pads at the same time. I can't toggle back and forth rapidly. So there's like a lot of, if you think about the standard co-op path down this initial chute here, there's a pretty fast way to get down, but I opt to go a little bit slower with red so that I can turn at the same time the blue turns, that sort of thing. So you'll watch as this starts. I'm going to come out at the start here, and what I'm doing is I'm holding down and right with blue and down and left with red at the same time. And then for those of us that run one player, you'll know that a good sight line is this black line right here. This black line right here on the side of the wall is a perfect time that once your blue marble hits that spot, that's the right time for you to shift from hitting down and right to just hitting right, so that the marble successfully navigates down the path between the second layer of walls and smoothly toward the ramp. So now at that same time, red is going to be up here because I've been holding down and left, and I'm going to hit right on both controllers at the same time. So at the same moment that I shift from down and right to right on blue, I'm going to shift from down and left to right on red. And then you'll see that they're both going to sneak through, and then I'm going to make sure that I'm using this wall here to ricochet them comfortably toward the ramp. So you already saw the blue ricochets off of it right there, and then as red comes careening down, red then also ricochets off of it right there. And then they work their way down the ramp, and then for me, I let the screen bounce kill red's momentum, and then I want to get them lined up like this. And now I'm looking up at the timer. Now I apologize because my save state that I used for this race had red winning the first race, because when I first started this category I was having red win because I felt like red needed all the time it could get. And then as I improved, I switched to having blue win because it felt like blue needed a few extra seconds. So if you go off of the first race, we should be staring at blue's timer to see this next number change, but instead we're going to look at red's timer. So for red's timer, I go by whenever this hits 63, that's when it's time to move. Because we can't see the drawbridge right now, but it is up. And if we just tried to go straight down, we probably wouldn't get there at the right time. You'd have to kill your momentum and wait, and then it's really awkward to kind of re-maneuver and reposition two marbles at the same time. So we wait here. We wait here until it hits 63, and then you could already start to see the marbles are going. So the marbles are going to go. We're going to go right until we hit this line, like right here. So when the marbles line up with this wall, so you kind of see them coming across that wall, that's when you hit down. So you only hit right very briefly to get them lined up with that diamond. And then when they cross over that wall, then we're going to hold down on both. So you hit right on both, and then down on both, and then right as blue hits this crack right here. I mean, it's amazing to think about it like this, because red is still really high. Like, it looks like red would just go, if you tried to hit right on the red D-pad right now, red would just go right in the hole. But because of momentum, because of your downward momentum, when you get to this point, if you now hit right on the D-pads, both of them, they will both make it across the bridge safely. So you hit right there, and the momentum carries them down and they come over the bridge nice and clean. And then you hit down to send them both down the pipe. Now, the pipe. This pipe. My dear friend, this pipe. A lot of this left edge of the pipe is not legit for getting the marble down. I would use this line here as a guide, the black line in the middle. If your marble is not touching, if you have like more than half of the marble to the left of it, then you're getting very close to the edge of what's allowable. And if you roll the marble off of this lip and it crashes down, and as the screen is scrolling down, then that marble is going to be respotted over here on the long path, and your run is dead. So the pipe is super important. You want to make sure that this marble, this is nearly as far as I would say you should go to the left with either marble. If you're not comfortable with going at this speed to make that turn to the pipe, let your marbles hit the wall over here. It's completely fine. If they hit the screen bounce and their momentum is dead, you can have them hit the screen bounce and then fall silent, stationary, and then just hold down. This side of the pipe is fine. So you can just roll them right off of the screen bounce into the pipe and it will go and they'll be fine. But if you want to go really fast, you run the risk of catching the left edge of the pipe and ruining your run. And you don't want to do that. So that, as it is, this example is pretty risky. It's about as risky as I would say. I wouldn't go any further to the left than that. So at any rate, here is the first intentional death that you're going to see here. Like the bumpy road, I'm just going to let red die, because the bumpy road is hard enough with the controller facing the right way, let alone angled 180 degrees. So we're just going to let him die, and that's fine, because we're going to set up our first death abuse here. So you get blue across the bumpy road, and then you get to this turn. This turn right here. When this turn happens, as blue is coming around this turn, red should already have been respotted from the death. So red up here, we're just going to hold left. At the moment that you turn blue to the left, you're also going to hit left on red and send red just off the edge, just send him crashing down this way. And this is going to be our first death abuse, because he will be falling and dying around the time that a time loss would occur. But because it happens while you're in the animation of dying, instead of incurring the 5-second time loss, it's simply trying to respot you after dying. And your respot is no longer on screen, so it just moves you to the next available respot and doesn't penalize you at all. And it's pretty cool. So I will show you that right now. We're going to put the circle on the red timer again, just so you can just pay attention to red's timer. So blue's coming around this bend, and they both hit left right there. And then lo and behold, red is respotted, and they were at 57 seconds, now they're at 55 because 2 seconds have elapsed. They did not lose 5 seconds for being effectively despawned off the top of the screen, because the despawn would have happened while they were dying. So instead of taking the 5-second penalty, they just get respotted ahead, and this is how red does not have to do the bumpy road section, which is a huge benefit, if you ask me. So at this point, we're just going to let red catch up, and we'll let red go down the pipe first. I went a little too far. Well, let's call out this screen bounce right here. It's very important, in my opinion. It's important to know that both of your marbles have momentum coming out of this tube. When they come out of this tube, they just roll right into the edge of the screen. If you release the D-pad and let them roll and hit the wall, the moment they come off of that screen bounce, hold down and left, and they will survive the ice. So just let them roll, just keep holding A. They'll roll out of the bottom of the tube, they'll hit the screen bounce, and the moment they hit the screen bounce, hit down and left, and hold it, and they will come out on the correct side of the ice. They won't go in the hole. You do this for both of them, so you can see essentially that my thumb on blue, it's not on the right side of the D-pad, it's on the left side of the D-pad. So like I'm not hitting any direction right now, because if I was just hitting left, then I would go toward the ice, but you'll see that blue comes out of the pipe and hits the screen bounce comfortably. And then as soon as it hits the screen bounce, that's when I hit down and left. So that down and left brings them right there, and then you just finish. You can just do a little bit of steering. That little bit of steering is the reason why, if we back up a step here, up here, I don't roll them right next to each other. I could have them like right up against each other, but blue gives red a little bit of room. That's because I have panic steering. When I come off of the ice patch, if I have to steer red, like I do right here, I have to navigate him around the flagpole. I will either crash him into the flagpole and lose a bunch of time from a death, or I will steer him across the finish line, but I will be too slow to react to blue, because blue will already be off the ice as well if they're too close to each other. This gap gives me comfortable amount of time to steer red, and then right as I'm done steering red, blue comes off, and then I can steer blue too. And that's the beginner race. So now let's see the beginner race start to finish without any pausing interruptions. So, simultaneous direction changes, both bounce off the wall, and down that ramp, line them up vertically, and then around the diamond, and then at the bridge, and then down into the tube at the same time. You let red die, and then you death abuse red to move him forward through the bumpy section. And you use the screen bounce to line up the ice, and then a little wiggle at the end if you need. It looks so simple, doesn't it? Okay, the third race is the intermediate race. This one is an opportunity to lose a whole bunch of time if your inputs are not terribly precise. We're going to do a couple of death abuses, and one of them is going to drag a marble through a number of respawns. And ideally, you want to save all of your time, but more than likely you are going to take one time loss unless you get it absolutely right. I think in this example I even do take a single time loss that I didn't hope to, but that's just how tight it ends up being. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to call out here is right as we get started. You see, I'm just leaving red alone. Red is just camping out up here. Now, our first death abuse is going to take place right away. It's not really new anymore, but one of the most recent time-saving tricks that we'd figured out as a community was the double bounce here through the maze. There is a specific pace that you can hit a wall and do a specifically positioned ricochet, and you can cut through that S curve there by just bouncing off of two walls, and you don't lose any momentum. You don't have to slow down. You just hit a perfect little double bounce there, and you come out the other side at full speed. So, over here, where we're hitting the second bounce on the double bounce with blue, it's at that moment, as we come off of the second wall, that we are going to simply hit down on the red controller and throw red off the side of the ledge. This will initiate the first death abuse of this race, because instead of taking a time loss to drag the red marble through the maze, you'll get repositioned as a result of the death and not take the time loss. So you'll see the blue is going to come over to this double bounce spot right here, and then as soon as we do that, that one moved. Yeah. As soon as we do that, you're going to have red fall down like that. So while red is dying, that gives blue a chance to get out of the maze. But lo and behold, you see that red has respawned and not suffered any time loss. Again, if we look at that again, you see 84 seconds on red's timer here. So it was 86, 85, 84, no time loss. Red is no worse for wear and almost out of the maze himself, or itself. And yeah, that's the first death abuse in this level. So, having survived that death abuse, we're just going to park blue outside of the maze for a second while we get red out, because these paths are a little bit different than each other. So we want to give red this opportunity to come out of the maze. Now, I'm going to point out this spot right here. If you are able to make this sharp turn, basically by hitting straight down, well, it's just straight down. You want to hit right initially to change red's momentum, but then hit down and have it come down off of this ramp at an angle and drop off. You can hit straight down with red and make it through the next S-curve at good speed, which we will do in this example. So you'll see red come down, hit straight down, and poof, automatically up to the acid pools. So, now that we're at the acid pools, what you're going to look for here is red is going to wait its turn while it waits for this acid pool to move over to this side. As the acid pool moves away, that's when you want to go, because it cycles back and forth, and it's very sensitive. There are lots of times if you are moving or you starting to move and the acid pool is on its way back, it's going to get you. So you want to get it while it's moving away. That's literally your only opportunity. Now at the same time, because we parked blue up here, and he hasn't moved, and it hasn't moved at all, sometimes this marble muncher up here will swallow blue, and blue will get repositioned back up here. That's okay. That's a perfectly fine death. Because blue is over here in this example, we're going to hit down on red and down and left on blue at the same time. If the marble muncher does get blue and pushes blue back, then its movement is going to start earlier, because we want blue to be around here at the time that red starts to move. So if blue's back here, if blue gets eaten by the marble muncher and gets pushed back, it normally also bumps into the marble muncher a little bit, so you want to wait until the acid pool is right in front of red. And when it's right in front of red, that's the time that you want to kick off your down and left movement until you see blue kind of hit this plane out here. And then once you see blue hit the plane, then you hit down with red. So in this case, they're going to go at the same time once the acid pool moves. So there they go. And now you're going to see that blue is going to start to get respawns here. Now sadly, this is where we are going to lose a little bit of time on blue, because blue's going to get spotted up there while red goes down the tube. But then we just barely didn't get the drag in this case. So you'll see the blue's timer went from 67 to 62 right there. However, as it tries to respot blue again, we do get the second drag, because you see the particles are forming up here in the top left as it's trying to then spot blue again, and we're going to get lucky here, and it's going to spot him there. It says -5, but that -5 is the first -5 registering. You saw it didn't happen twice. If we go back again, you watch this happen in full speed. It goes 67, 62, 61, 60. Okay? So blue did suffer a time loss during the first drag, but not during the second one. You can time it right such that blue suffers 0 time losses. That's very tight. I would say an okay result is to get 1 time loss, and a bad result if you don't get your pacing right with red, because really the important part here is that red's not slowing down on his trip down to the tube. If red slows down a little bit, you're likely to suffer either 2 time losses for blue, or at least 1 time loss and bad positioning for blue. This is really good positioning for blue right here, because all we have to do is press down and send it right down the tube. Sometimes you get a good spawn over here, and all you have to do is press left and send it right down the tube. But sometimes you get placed up here behind the timer, and then you have to do extra navigation, and you don't have time for that, because we are now focused on the screen bounce down here for red. So while all of this is going on, you're racing down to the tube with red, and you're watching the time losses accumulate, hopefully not accumulate, but you're watching for time losses on blue, and you're making sure the blue spawn is okay to get blue down the tube. You also have to be mindful of the corner of your eye, watch red's bounce, because you're going to get a little bit of momentum off of that bounce because red was going down a hill. So red runs into the screen bounce, it bounces off slightly, and the moment it comes off the wall a little bit, that's when you want to accelerate down with red. So it comes off the wall a tiny bit, and then we accelerate down. So you can see we're not up against the wall anymore, but all I did was press down. I waited till the right moment after the screen bounce. You have to be patient, wait till after the screen bounce. That's the key. Red bounces off the wall, comes off the wall a little bit, and then you hit down, and that momentum is enough to launch you off of the side of this ramp. We go back a tiny bit. Red launches off that ramp and lands successfully onto the level below. If you are up against the edge of the screen and hit down, you will die. You won't be able to make that jump. You'll just fall in the gap between the ramp and the platform that red is on right now. So now what we're going to do is we're going to set up an intentional death for red to help better position on the carpet, because, I'll be honest, this section is really difficult to steer with red's controller inverted 180 degrees. So, my plan Plus I've got to worry about getting blue over toward the carpet as well. So blue's coming out of the tube now. We're letting blue go. We're going to do the same screen bounce setup with blue. But right now what we're looking for is for red to die at a specific moment. Or rather, more to the point, make sure that it's past a specific point. So the arrow right here is pointing to this little crevice right here. You want red to die on these 6 blocks. Somewhere on these 6 blocks, red has to have gotten onto these 6 before taking a death. If you're down too low, then the marble gets respotted out here and you still have to navigate up to the edge of the carpet. If you die down here, you get spotted down here. If you go too far straight down, you can get respotted down here past the entrance to the carpet. So you want to get onto this 3x2 set of blocks right up here and die in here. Usually it's the easiest. As you're coming down, you hit the right-hand turn and you come careening, you clip this edge and then roll off right here like I've just done with red. Meanwhile, we are nervous about blue, making sure we get the screen bounce for blue. So let's see. So red's dying, and when red dies there, while red is dying, blue hits the screen bounce wall and comes down that same path, and lo and behold, red will get respotted in the perfect spot, which is right here. Because now all you have to do is press right, and you end up on the carpet. You don't have to hit any diagonals or anything. You can stick to cardinal directions. So as soon as red spawns and there's an opening, you take it. So you take that opening, and you leave blue behind. Now, the funny thing is, I accidentally did the good intentional death with blue as well, so blue got really good positioning. Normally, I don't end up dying with blue, and I just kind of leave him on the carpet there. Or not leave him on the carpet. I usually end up leaving him on the path somewhere around here, and then once red finishes, I then have to navigate him up to the carpet. But I'll tell you what, that's a lot easier with blue than it is with red. If you play Marble Madness at all, then you're probably more comfortable holding the controller right side up with a conventional grip. And in my case, blue is the closest to a conventional grip that I've got. So I feel really comfortable navigating blue around harder corners than I do with red. So meanwhile, we're just going to have red finish, and blue is just going to go onto the carpet as soon as it can, and there we go. So that is intermediate. We'll run it back one more time all the way through without stopping so you can see. We start with the double bounce on blue with the death abuse for red. Right on the second bounce, we roll them off, and it puts red most of the way through the maze. We push red the rest of the way through the maze and up to the edge of the acid pool, and then they both go at the same time, and blue takes deaths and gets dragged and hopefully doesn't lose any time. Red sets up the screen bounce and intentional death to get to the carpet, and then blue does the same screen bounce and intentional death, although that intentional death I find to be pretty optional because it's really hard to get through all of that all in one shot. This was a pretty good example run. And that's intermediate. Okay, so race number 4 is aerial, and there's not a ton of tech here. It's just a difficult stage that requires some timing and just a lot of practice to get used to. So the first thing we're going to do here is we are going to let the marbles die. I'm going to let them die if they roll off of these huge ramps, and the reason I'm going to do that is because it generates static spawns. Like, I just want them to respawn at a consistent spot, because it's easier for me to establish control over each of the marbles if I know exactly where they're going to be. So red spawns first, and as I'm waiting for blue to spawn, all I'm going to do is I'm going to move red 1 square to the left. So you can see that red it spawned over here, and I'm just moving it over to this one because it lines up better with the ramp. I can hit straight down when I go to take control of red again to move down and then down the hill. So that's, I just do a little nudge left there. Meanwhile, I just want to get blue onto this ramp, and I don't care how hard I do it or soft I do it or what have you. So blue is going to go down and right just enough to hit the ramp, and then that's fine. Because I just want blue down at the bottom of the ramp section so that they don't take a time loss while I'm navigating red through the vacuum section. So you'll see here the down with red and down and right with blue. In this case I killed blue, but that's fine. It doesn't matter. Blue is fine because blue is going to get respotted right there. And that's okay. That's where we want him. Or it. And the next piece here, that's the wrong arrow, is right here. When red goes to turn down this ramp to head toward the catapult, I'm going to hit down with blue as well to generate a death abuse for blue. And it should not cost us any time. We'll stare at blue's timer as we do it. So we get red through the vacuums and down to this section. We hit down with both marbles, and lo and behold, blue did not suffer any time loss. We'll watch it again. We can see the timer at 67, 66, 65, and that skipped that entire navigation section with blue. The only reason I do that skip is because, again, it's easier for me to just park blue and hit down at the right time than it is for me to try to steer both of these at the same time, because while it looks like the maps are the same, these straightaways are different lengths. So you see the blue's turn is all the way at the left edge of the screen. They have a lot further to go to get to the ramp toward the catapult than red does. And sometimes that kind of gets lost in translation here, is that their routes look the same, but they're quite different. So it's a lot easier to park one and death abuse one to drag it down through the maze than it is to try to steer them both at the same time. So while red is in the air, we move blue into position, and then while blue is in the air, we are going to move red over here, just out of the way, otherwise they're going to collide. So you just got to move red out of the way so that blue can get in the right spot. Now in this case, we've done very well. We haven't slowed ourselves down too much with unintentional deaths or slow movement through the vacuums, so when we get here, the first piston pattern should be a bottom row 2 pistons, like that. If you make a mistake, if you have an extra death or you have a couple bumps along the way, you're probably going to get top row all 3. And if you're trying to move into these pistons the way you normally would when you expect a bottom row and you get a top, you're going to have a bad time. So just remember that if you're slow, when you get here, odds are you're not going to get a good piston pattern, and you're going to have to be a little more patient moving blue through. So what we're going to do here, this is going to be the first intentional time loss we take for red, because it's the pistons. And I don't want to have to deal with trying to drag 2 marbles through these pistons. So I'm just going to focus on getting blue through this section here and get blue down to the big 4 here, the first big jump. And the good thing is that when we get down here on the big toward the big jump, red gets respawned on the ramp. And when red gets respawned on the ramp, which starts to roll, we take the 5-second time loss. And if you just hold down and right, it's one of those perfect angle things where even if you bump into the pistons, you won't ricochet off at a funny angle. You'll just keep bouncing, and eventually, once the pistons drop off, they'll let you through, like that. And you want to get red in position. Usually what I do is I have blue kind of on the bottom half of this straightaway, and then red kind of on the top half, a little behind, like this. And when you get here, you're going to get some interesting piston patterns. Usually when you get here, it's going 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you'll either see doubles or you'll see the 4, 3, 2, 1 again. Doubles is what you see most of the time, so you're going to get double, double, quadruple, and quadruple is when it's time to go. So in this case we see double, and then, well, I was already, sorry, I was a little bit, I got a little ahead of myself. So you see there's the 1, there's the double, and the quadruple. And then basically, practically just as the quadruples start to drop, that's when you start to move. So they drop and you go, and we're going to steer blue tight around this corner, but we're not going to steer red tight around this corner. We're going to set up a screen bounce for red. The reason is we want to generate a little bit of separation before we get to this jump here. So you see where red took that screen bounce right there, and that is intentional. We just run red straight into the wall rather than having red try to cut the corner as well, because we don't want the marbles too close to each other. The bad things can happen on this ramp. If one of them loses acceleration before the other one and the other one's right behind them, they usually bounce into each other and just bad stuff. Time losses galore, broken marbles, that sort of thing. So by having red trail blue, then you can comfortably get to here. Now's where we're going to take an intentional death for red because, again, the next step is trying to navigate the hammers, and just like you don't want to try to navigate the hammers with two marbles at the same time, just like you don't want to navigate the pistons with two controllers at the same time, you don't want to do the hammers that way either. So we navigate around the turn with blue after the jump, and we just let red die. We just let red just park red right there while we navigate the hammer pattern with blue. And that 1, 2, 4, 3, if you get here on good pace, that's the one you'll normally see. You might even see the split doubles that happen right before it. But that can be, like, I typically am just patient and waiting for the 1, 2, 4, 3 to happen. So you do the 1, 2, 4, 3. After the 2 hammer drops down, you can start navigating blue through. You get blue to the end, and then the moment you cross with blue, you start with red, and you just do the same thing again. There are these 4, 3, 2, 1 patterns, like the one you just saw. I'm going to cut through between 3 and 2 on this 4, 3, 2, 1 pattern. If you're not comfortable with that, you'll see that the next thing that comes up are the doubles that are close to each other. Feel free to wait for those doubles if you don't feel comfy with however you have to steer red. It's just that over time I've gotten more comfortable steering red, although I definitely preferred the stacked doubles patterns myself. They are definitely the easiest pattern to get around. But that is the aerial race. So there's not too much going on as far as abuses and whatnot. We do take an intentional time loss. I would assume with more precise timing, we could probably death abuse that red time loss and keep that time, but I haven't found a really good consistent way to do it yet. But at any rate, here is aerial start to finish without the pausing. So again, we let them both die. Red nudges slightly to the left, we push blue down the ramp, and then red goes right after. And red keeps moving. Here's the blue death abuse, while red goes to the catapult, and then while blue is on the catapult, red moves out of the way. Blue hits the pistons and goes right through and drags red down with a time loss, and then we get them both into position, and we go double, double, quadruple, and then go. Blue turns tight, red takes the screen bounce to generate separation to avoid collisions, and then you're down to the hammers. And this did take a while for me as well. There was a time, for a while, I used to drop the blue controller right now and flip red back around the right way and navigate the hammers that way, because doing hammers with the controller at 180 degree shift was something very challenging that I wasn't really ready for at the beginning, but I grew into it, and now I'm okay with it. I'm more concerned about the integrity of maintaining the grip throughout the run until the very, very end than I am about getting the hammers a tiny bit faster, and arguably it's not really faster. If I can get through it cleanly with the controller the way I'm holding it with the unconventional grip, it is faster than the other way, because if I have to take 2 seconds to flip the controller around and drop blue, it's not really any faster, to be perfectly honest. And I would almost always go through the doubles at that point as well. But that's aerial. So this is race number 5. This is the silly race, where everything you know is wrong and we go up and not down. We're gonna do time losses right at the front of this race, because this one is tricky and you're sharing the road a lot, so it's a lot easier to just trade time losses between each marble to navigate the tricky early sections here separately, and then they'll come together at the end. So the very first thing we're going to do here is we're going to set up a time loss for blue, because trying to do this crisscross when you're controlling both marbles is a huge pain in the butt. So what we're going to do is we're going to put blue, we're just going to bring him up as high as it can go. So we're going to aim for that corner up there. We're just going to kind of park blue up there as best we can while we navigate the zigzag with red. And then we get red up into the diamond, and then we get a respawn here of blue. Now blue is going to respawn practically off the screen, so you kind of have to navigate around this hole semi-blind, but that's okay. You'll just take a little bit of time to get used to the movement here. It's not a huge deal once you get the hang of it. So we're going to move blue into the diamond, and we're going to move red all the way up into that top corner, and I mean all the way. You get as far up as you can without getting bounced back out. This is really, really, really important. The time loss we're going to take for red at the top of this diamond is going to hopefully then position red at a good spawn spot halfway through this really difficult middle section of Silly, so that we get through the hard parts without actually having to steer both marbles through. And we want to avoid the really hard opening section for red, the red path for the center of this, right from the get-go. So we get red up to the tippy top, and we send blue up through the tube, and we're scrolling the screen fast enough that we get one of the two good spawns. Now again, like I said, there are two good spawns. They're here. Oops, I didn't pause it early enough. They are here or here. You can get either of those two spawns. They're both good because they only require cardinal direction movement from red to navigate the rest of the way. And that's really, really important. From the spawn point that we're at right here with red, it is literally just you hold up, and then once you get up to a certain point you just hit right, and you'll come right up over the top here. So it's just an up and a right. Whereas with this one, it is left and then up. As long as you're holding A, you just go left and then up, and it's real smooth, and you don't have to do any sort of funky diagonal movements or anything like that. And that ends up being really, really important as you're trying to not let your time bleed away in this section. So we're going to get blue to the bottom of the ramp, and then we're going to go up and right, and then we're going to send blue up the ramp, and we're going to get red up the ramp there too. So you saw blue hit the screen bounce and then go up. This is the screen bounce hole of fame. This is not your friend normally. If you're doing one player any percent runs, we've all lost runs to this stupid hole because we try to navigate around that tiny little section at the edge of the screen between the hole and the screen bounce without hitting the screen bounce, because if you do, then your marble goes straight into the hole. In this 1p2c category, we use the screen bounce to our advantage because we aren't gunning for the hole right away. You can kind of roll up and nudge up against the screen bounce, and then once you hit the screen bounce and your momentum's dead, just hold up, and you will go up right past it. It's wonderful. The next piece here that we're going to focus on are these two birds. Once you're past the screen bounce hole, you are waiting to see two birds. You really want to see them both. This is one of the optimal patterns where they're both out at the same time. Because you're going to navigate both marbles through this little hallway here, you really want them to already be out. You don't want to have to sit there and wait for them, ideally. And then you also don't want them to be staggered, because then that just becomes a big pain in the ass. So you hope that they're together. Now in this case, because they're together, we'll just kind of start moving right in behind them. We'll go down and left with both, and then left, and then up and left. And so you just kind of smoothly get through this section here without banging into walls and stuff. So down and left, and then up and right, and into that hole up there. The reason we do that is because the next bird section with this little S-curve is a huge pain in the butt, and we don't want to have to deal with it. So by sending blue into the hole and then red, you'll see the blue spawns right there. And while blue spawns right here, because red died in pretty much the same spot, they want to put red in the same spot. So you see red's already starting to materialize here, but it can't. Instead, they put red up here, which is wonderful. because from this spawn point that red spawned at, if you hold up, just straight up, you will get to the ramp. So now it's just a matter of watching the last two birds and making sure you don't go right as they spawn. You don't want to run into them. So in this case, you may want to wait until you see both of the top two birds as well. In this case, I don't have to. I just gunned it. A little risky there, but it worked out. But yeah, I just held up, and red went right into the ramp section here. And I go for silly skips here because they'll save a few extra seconds, and we need all the time we can get. And so I go there, and blue follows behind. Here's that pixel. That's the pixel that you need to get onto, where you're not quite up at the you're not quite up at this third black line yet. You're not quite on there. You're a little below it. That's where you want to be to sneak the marbles through. And so red gets through and blue gets through, and now is the important time to check your timers. So the way that I navigate Ultimate with the most safety puts red at risk, for reasons I'll get to when we get down there. As such, I want red to have more time than blue, and I've been trading races so far because I want to make sure that I'm not sacrificing much of blue's time for red's sake. This is just the single advantage that I will give, essentially, because basically the way I have the races mapped out so far is I have, I believe I have red winning each of the first 3 races and then blue winning the 4th, because red is more likely to suffer time losses along the way. We have 2 intentional time losses for red, 1 in aerial, 1 in silly, compared to just 1 intentional time loss for blue in silly. So it's all going to kind of counterbalance out here. So unless you've gotten some weird time losses, or you picked up a little bit of extra time running over little things in the diamond, you're probably going to want to have, if they're about the same time on the timers, you're going to want to have red win. If the timers are unbalanced and you wish to rebalance them, then obviously once you get up here, you just pick and choose which one you want to have win this race. I typically have red win it, though. So I have red win, so he gets an extra 5 seconds going into the last race. And this is a really, really good example of a good, clean, silly race, but I don't, it happens very rarely that this comes through as clean as it does. So let's just watch it all the way through, start to finish, without pausing. So again, the first thing we do is set up blue for a time loss. We just bury him in the corner, and we move red up the zigzag there. And then we want to plant red at the very tippy top of that diamond, so we get one of the 2 good spawns in the middle section, and we got the good one on the left. We go up and right to get through there. We use the screen bounce for both marbles to get around the screen bounce hole. We get the lucky bird spawn, so we just go, and we pitch ourselves into that hole, and we don't move blue. The moment blue spawns, you just leave it alone so that you can get red to be spawned further ahead. And then, yeah, go for sillies if you can. If not, just navigate around the top section. Easier said than done, I'm sure. But yeah. That's, that is silly. And now we're going to move on to ultimate. So we've made it to the final race, which is great. But this is going to be the hardest one, and it's got the ficklest thing possible right at the end, which is wonderful. But we'll get to that point. First, we got to get down this mountain. And the first thing that we want to focus on here is that because the paths are so different, we're probably going to be alternating movement most of the time, with one small exception right at the front here. The very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to get red up onto the ramp. So that's going to be the big thing at first. Once we get red up onto the ramp, you're going to freeze him there. Oops. You're going to freeze him there. And now we are going to start to move both red and blue at the same time. So we're going to hit down and right with red, and then we're going to start our normal movement up onto the ramp with blue at the same time. So it's not a single held direction for blue, obviously, because you have to navigate up the ramp, which is going to require a little bit of steering, but it's easier to manage steering with the D-pad facing right side up. That's basically all I'll say. So, but you get red up here, you kill the momentum, and then you do them both at the same time, like that. And now the important thing here is that as red is coming out of the tube, you kill his momentum. You don't touch him again. You just let go of the D-pad. So you hold down and right to get him into the tube, and then you let go. You can still hold A, that's fine, but you don't want to hold the D-pad anymore, because where red's momentum dies is going to be a useful position, and you don't want to alter that at all. You're going to continue to steer blue, so you steer blue up the ramp and into the tube. You're going to steer blue out of the tube, over the bumpy stuff, and just kill the momentum right up near the screen bounce here. You can fall into that hole behind there, so you don't want to do that. So once you get off of the blue bumpy stuff, I normally just hold right, and then when I get to the first little indent, I hit left to kill his momentum before you actually hit the screen bounce, or like right on top of it. So now we're going to focus on, so that's where blue stops. You get blue down to there and stop. And then we're going to focus on red again. Red's still just been hanging out here. But for red, this whole section coming up is all cardinal directions. I know you're looking at it and you go, yells, that's crazy, but it is. It is very much, you're going to hit down to about here, and then you're going to hit left. And because of your momentum, you're going to go left at an angle across here. And then once you get to this third row of the red and pink blocks, you hit right, and it acts like these blocks effectively make it seem as though if you use 90 degrees, like you're using 45. So you hit right, and you just go down and right with speed. And you get down to here, and you hit left. You can actually do this relatively slow, and it'll still work. And then you hit right, and you drop down onto the bumpy stuff. So allow me to demonstrate with this highlight that I have. You go down, left, right, and then kill the momentum. So that now red is in that good spot. Now you've gotten blue. Blue is near the screen bounce, or like near the edge of the screen. So with blue, you should just be able to hit down and get to this ramp. And this ramp's tricky. If you hit the screen bounce a second time and then try to go down the ramp straight down, you'll probably crack the marble and lose some time. And you don't want to do that. So just, you can be more careful than I was in this example. Get down this ramp and onto the red and pink stuff for blue. And then you're going to get down to here and hang a right. I end up hitting the right a little too hard here, and I die once, but that's okay. This was still the cleanest example I had to show. This is just a tribute to how hard this is. I sat here working on it for a while, and I couldn't get the perfect clean example, so I just took the next best one, which is just that one death. So blue respots, and then we get to here, and as you're making the bend to go onto the ice, right here, with blue, that's when you're going to start moving red again. So you're going to hit down to go over the ice with blue, and as you hit down, you're going to hit down and right with red for one more death abuse to finish this whole thing off. So red takes the death abuse up there, and it's another death abuse and drag like the one in intermediate. So you're going to watch red's timer here. I believe in this example, red does take one time loss, and it's very typical for red to take one time loss. If you're lucky, you won't take any, but if you're unlucky, you'll take two. So here's the drag, and there's the first respot, and we do take a time loss there, and then we take a second respot, and we don't. So if we look over that again, timer is at 30, 29, 24, 23, 22, and there were 2 respots, and you only took a time loss on 1, which is good. But now here's Steely, and here's your problem. So the problem, if you don't already know, is that when you run 2-player marbles, the game can't handle all of these shifting platforms and 3 marbles at the same time. If you were so bold as to try and move one of your marbles onto the first section of the snake, just onto this first section of the snake here, with 1, 2, 3 marbles in play, the game hard locks. You don't want to do that. So, but that said, Blue is already down here on the first set of disappearing platforms, and we don't want to have him take a death and jumble up and make a big mess of the Steely platform up at the top. So you want to park Blue here. Right here. But it's pretty important that you try to park Blue as much on this last diamond in the corner as possible, so that after we take care of Steely, and Red works its way down through this section, Red needs enough room here to get past Blue and not touch the screen bounce and get onto the snake. And it's pretty tight, but it works out pretty well if you can get Blue onto this last diamond on the floor and park Blue there. So now you've got the issue with Steely. Now when Steely greeted Red with a death by throwing Red off, but we were also fortunate here that in the effort here of Steely doing that kill, Steely's momentum shifted in such a way that it flung itself back upwards and off the screen. And that's not all accidental, because there's a really good spawn you can get with Red, and I don't have the exact positioning of it. As you're doing the death abuse and drag, sometimes Red spawns right near the top of the screen, like in the let's say the top 4 diamonds up here, which is perfect because then Steely is like going after Red and swings down and swings up after Red, and usually just despawns itself right away, which is really nice. In this case, if we go back a touch, and it's hard to see because of the timer and the pixelation, but effectively Red spawned right behind the timer, so kind of low, and that's a little too low. It's a little lower than we want it. So as soon as I can, you see I start to move Red up. I try to bring Red up to the top here a little bit if I can. Now, Steely still took me to the cleaners, but in doing so, so much momentum was built up for Steely that it flung himself off the top, which is perfect. And you'll see at this point, you watch my grip, I see it happen, and I immediately put down the Blue controller, because this is the one spot where I bail on the simultaneous controller grip, the unconventional grip, and I switch back to conventional now because time is ticking. And if you look at the 2 timers, now is when you have to make the call. It probably takes about I'm trying to remember how long it takes to get through the entire maze here at the end. But you see I'm sitting there with 18 seconds on Red, so I put Blue down so I can finish with Red first. So, and then it's just from here, it's just, can you navigate the end point of this race? So there it took 10 seconds off the Red timer to get through the entire thing. So, and that's if you do it cleanly without any deaths. So when you're thinking about how you finish, that's what you want to think about. You look at the time, and you look at your positioning, and you go, alright, do I have enough time to finish one entirely and then finish the other entirely? Because you may also find yourself in a position where they're both under 20, so you would not necessarily have time to finish each of them one after the other, so you might have to like get the one that has the least amount of time, get it around, and then park it over here at the last section because maybe it has like 15 seconds. So you could take 7 to get here, and then you could take another 4 to work on getting the other marble around, like the snake or something, down to here. And then quick finish it, and then finish the other one. It gets really dicey when you do that, but it can be done. But then yeah, from here it's just finishing with blue. I don't really have any tips for finishing the bottom of Ultimate apart from how you would normally finish the bottom of Ultimate. And there's not really much going on there, except for what is customary. So yeah, so that is pretty much all of it. So we're gonna watch it all through one more time. Again, the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get red up to the top of the ramp, and then we'll move them both at the same time. Let me get the circles off of the timers here. We park red, and we get blue through to the bumpy road, and now it's down, left, right, and kill red. It's momentum, and then we get blue down through the slick stuff, and then hit down, and then down and right on red at the same time as we go through the ice. And we drag red through, ideally only taking 1 time loss or none. And then it's just the Steely despawn. You can try to force it by camping out at the top of the screen. Sometimes Steely doesn't cooperate. Sometimes Steely cooperates wonderfully and just despawns itself right away. And then it's just staring at your timers. You go, how much time do I have? Who has to go first? Because you can't really do this together. It's nearly impossible. And yeah, and that's it. So that is 1p2c, Marble Madness. Thanks for watching.